Hi, I'm Harold Bell, and this is the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. Well, we got a very special program this evening. We're going down to Atlanta, Georgia, and talk to a friend of mine. But before we go down there, I want to send out my deepest sympathy and condolences to the family of Roland Fatty Taylor. Fatty was a native Washingtonian. He grew up in Northeast D.C. and was a product of the D.C. public schools. Fatty transferred from Spingarn High School and graduated from Fairmont Heights High School in Prince George's County. He died in Denver, Colorado on Thursday, December 7, 2017. He was 71 years old. Against all odds, and the naysayers and the player haters, he went all the way from Dodge City Community College to the Sunny Hill Basketball League and LaSalle University in Philadelphia. These institutions led him to a stellar 8-year pro career in the ABA-NBA. Fatty joined the American Basketball Association in 1969. After 1 year playing for the Washington Capitals, he moved on to the Virginia Squires, with whom he spent the prime of his career, tallying 3,495 points, 1,737 assists, and 1,715 rebounds in 5 seasons. He became known as one of the outstanding defensive players in the league, known primarily for run-and-gun style. On the Squires, Fatty played with former NBA stars Adrian Smith, Jumbo Jim Eakins, and Julius Doc Irving. For 1.5 seasons, he was a teammate of George Gervin. He has been credited with coining Gervin's nickname, the Iceman. He first called Gervin Iceberg Slim, but Iceberg Slim got lost somewhere in the shuffle and the Iceman stuck. Fatty retired in 1977 with a combined NBA totals of 5,098 points, 2,563 assists, and 2,524 rebounds. He was named to the ABA's All-Defensive First Team in 1973 and 1974. Fatty never developed a decent jump shot, but the jump shooters feared his in-your-jockey-strap mentality, defensive skills. He was known as a defensive force in the NBA. In a recent conversation I had with our affiliate mentor, playground and NBA legend Sonny Hill, he said, "Fatty Taylor is on my all-time list as a great player, but he was a better human being." Philadelphia will be heartbroken when they hear the news of his death, because this city loves him like he was one of their very own. He never forgot who he was and where he came from. He loved his hometown of Washington, D.C. and his homeboys. During his pro career, he often reached out to me and would call and say, "Harold, who you got on Inside Sports tonight? You want Dr. J? Well, we're going to be hanging out together at a concert. Give me a time to call and I will make it happen." He kept his word, as he did with the Iceman, George Gervin, David Thompson, and George McGinnis, all NBA Hall of Famers, and all made guest appearances on Inside Sports thanks to Fatty Taylor. For the more complete blog commentary on Fatty, check out blackmeninamerica.com or the original InsideSports.com. Rest in peace, my brother. Well, let's move on down to Atlanta, Georgia. My special guest was born in Walter Reed Hospital January 16, 1963, almost 55 years ago. At 9 months, his mom put him in a stroller and marched him up to the Lincoln Monument to see Dr. Martin Luther King deliver his speech on the Washington Mall. 4 years later, he moved to Atlanta, Georgia, with his family, only to see the Martin Luther King funeral procession stop at the steps of his home on Fair Street in front of Morehouse College. It was here Robert Kennedy and Jesse Jackson walked to his front door and asked his mother for a glass of water while the funeral procession stood in the heat of Georgia. Fast forward 50 years later, and he is at the foothills of what is the new civil rights movement. He is the president of the DCAB, 100 Men, Black Men in America.com Incorporated. His 100 man chapter was named the Economic Empower Chapter of the Year in 2017. Community Service Chapter of the Year, among other awards for serving the community. He himself was awarded the Barack Obama Lifetime Achievement Award for community service in 2016. He has received many local awards for community service, and many of his members are nationally known for their activist work in the community. We would like to talk right now to my man, his programs with kids, his accomplishments, and where he sees the black community 55 years later. And I'm talking about none other than Big John Hollins Jr. How you doing, big fella?
Well, I'm doing good, man. First of all, Harold, it's a pleasure and an honor to be on your program, the original Inside Sports. My condolences to your friend. There's so many people that have, come and passed your way and met you, and they all seem to be better for it. So I just feel it's a privilege to be able to be on the call here with you, and looking forward to us talking.
Well, Big John, you have done some fantastic work in the community yourself, and you get ready to go. You get ready to make a transition from 10 years with the 100 Black Men in Atlanta, Georgia, and where do you go from here? You can't be going too far with all the problems that we got going in the black community. What does the future hold for you?
Well, let me tell you, I just got back from San Antonio at a leadership summit for the 100 Black Men of America, talking about all the issues that our society and we deal with today. And believe me, the world is truly changing, but some things stay the same. One of the changes, it snowed in San Antonio while we were there, which was, I thought it was going to be a warm experience. But as far as where we are today and where does it go after 10 years with the 100 Black Men of America, I've learned a lot. I tell you, Harold, I decided to join the chapter and the organization because of what I saw. And I saw men serving our community, Black men going into the community and mentoring to our young Black boys and giving real time to try to make a difference in their lives. And so I said, I want to be a part of that. I already had a program of my own called ATL Metro RBI. Mm-hmm. And it's in conjunction with Major League Baseball and the Braves. As you, Harold, I'm an ex-ball player. I played baseball for Georgia State University and was invited as a unrestricted free agent by the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1986. But that 91-mile-an-hour fastball kind of slowed down to about 86, 87 with a torn rotator cuff, and they never signed my contract. So I went on with life, and it brought me here. And I tell you, after 10 years, I'll continue to work with the 100 and continue to work with my community because we are, as you said in the introduction, 50 years later, it feels like we're back where we were then.
That's right. That is so right. John, just recently in the news, they finally convicted a white police officer for killing unarmed black men. And that, we have had very few victories, man, in the past decades when it comes to shoot these officers shooting unarmed black men. And I'm talking about the black man that was shot in South Carolina, shot in the back by the white officer running away from him. Well, the judge and the jury finally gave him 20 years, and people are applauding that. But we still got such a long ways to go when it comes to the mentality of police officers, not only in Washington, D.C., Prince George's County, in Georgia, but around this country, man. I just got through watching a video today. Somebody showed me where this police officer went to this apartment building, a hotel, where they claimed that a man was there with a gun. And come to find out, he was the exterminator, exterminating apartment. But this police officer, cowboy police officer, went and would look like a machine gun and told this guy to get down face on the floor and put his hands out. He had this man crying for his life. He didn't have any weapons or anything, man. No weapons on him, man. He locked his arms behind his head. He did anything. Do you know this guy shot him 5 times? Killed him dead, and guess what? It was a white guy at that. So what chance do we have, John, if they're now going to do that to white folks? We don't stand a chance, man. Where do we go from here?
Well, Harold, we've talked about this, you and I, before. And when I say we've talked about this, we talked about what do we do about police officers and police brutality. And let me back up before I address the question that you had.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a police officer for 16 years.
Right.
Your brothers were in law enforcement.
That's right.
One a marshal and another police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And we know of several police officers that, do an outstanding job, and they protect and serve, and they have a very difficult job, and it becomes even harder now because when they walk into a situation, because of what all these bad cops are doing, they're in self-defense and they're scared. And the fear is real, as you just said. They killing white folks now. Mm-hmm. And what I don't understand is, what are we doing about the screening of some of these people that are mentally not capable of carrying a gun? A gun is something that has a judge and jury connected to it. It's called a trigger. And that person, in my opinion, should not be able to pull that trigger unless life is in danger. And when I say life is in danger, I mean life is in danger. I don't mean the thought of life might be in danger, so I better shoot somebody.
Right.
But actually life in danger. And what happens is you have to honor human life in order to preserve it. And it's funny you would say this was a white man because, my argument for a few years was many of these cops don't honor our young African-American men as being human. Mm-hmm. They dehumanize them based on some of the behavior of some of their brothers and cousins. Because as you and I both know, everybody black, not your friend, and everybody white, not your enemy.
That's right.
But what has happened is we become categorized based on some of the evil that one person may have done. Then now it's open game to shoot all Negroes, black men, because that way we gonna always let each other off. And that's one of the biggest issues that we deal with, and that is them policing themselves. Mm-hmm. Every police organization should have an outside community of the community in which it serves, an outside community judge and jury, because there's no way they can judge and jury themselves. We've seen that over and over. If 99 police officers have a shooting, 98 of them, if not 99, get off. We all know that everybody makes mistakes. A police officer will tell you that we're doing everything we can to find the bad ones because nobody's perfect. Well, if nobody's perfect, why is it perfect that nobody goes to jail? You just gave us one in South Carolina, and I commend them for doing the right thing. But wonder if it wasn't on camera. Wonder if it didn't have all the exposure that it had. You and I both know the answer to that. Would he be going to jail?
No
What's the
way.
answer, Harold?
No way. No, there's no way. And you know, John, the thing about this, I just found out that after I saw that video today, that officer got off scot free, man. They would not convict this guy with the camera, John, with the camera on, shooting this man dead, just like he was a dog. So you're right, man. We are hustling backwards, and I think one of the main things what we don't understand. And John, you was just here for the Congressional Black Caucus this year. And one thing, I went into a couple of those forums where we were talking about police brutality. But the one thing they never brought up is that they got to start at the top, man. And I'm talking about the FOP, the Fraternity Order of Police, which is now the Ku Klux Klan, man. You have never, and as long as you've been working in this field, you have never heard an FOP president admit that was a bad shooting. All the shootings, man, are justified when it comes to the FOP. So if they don't get rid of the FOP, who control police departments all over this country, it's a shame that we don't have black officers establishing their own organizations, man, to challenge these guys. Until they are challenged, man, we gonna keep falling dead in the streets, John.
Well, let me tell you about that challenge that you spoke of. There is a fraternal order of police called Noble.
Yeah, I know.
Noble?
I'm familiar.
National Organization of Black Law Enforcement. But here's the thing. I spoke to someone in Noble, one of the past presidents. And I don't want to say any names because it's not about calling him out as much as the conversation and how it brought chills to me. The question was, there are police officers, as we know, out using the badge as vigilantes. And they get captured every now and then within that police organization, as he captured the one that was in his organization, and they get reprimanded. This guy had spent 12 years as a vigilante police officer, only he was African American, and he was working as a gang, killing other gangs, admittedly to him. Wow. This is all documented. So my question to him was, because we know as an African American, it's harder for us to get away with something more so than anybody else. So I said, if he can get away with that for 12 years, and you guys do a great job in screening, what do we do about these small town white police officers who are members of the Klan, members of the skinhead, members of hate groups, and they go out every day with a gun and badge, and you hope your child is not pulled over on a bad road far out when nobody's moving? So he told me, he said there are 17,000 police organizations in this country. Wow. And out of 17,000 police organizations, we cannot control fraternal situations within these small towns. He said, hey, they had a situation in New York with the Irish. He said they had a situation in Chicago with the Italians. He said, people hire their cousins and brothers, and, in these small towns, they know what they do, and they don't care. He said, my suggestion is to drive slow and to be careful. Wow. I said, in essence, here you are, a police officer and once president of the fraternal organization, and you're telling me there's nothing we can do about it because they police themselves. As I shared with you earlier, Harold, our problem is they police themselves. And we've seen in many countries, Africa, Mexico, not Mexico, but Africa, many countries where those that police end up taking over and ruling. So that can't happen with the layers of military and police here in this country. But in those small towns, in those areas where they have total control, you got to stay off the streets. Wow. It's sad. Like you said, if we go back to 1963, you're a black man, and you were around that time. I was just a baby. What did y'all do? Your parents told you. Stay off the street.
Yeah.
get in the house.
Yeah.
Because if you got caught out there, then you weren't treated fairly. Well, guess what? Here it is 50 years later. And I have to tell my son that's in college, man, don't go out off that campus once it gets dark.
Mm-hmm.
Because you and I both know that he's flipping a corner, driving a relatively new car, nice, and in a small town, he has no idea what he's going to run up against.
That's right, man. That's a sad commentary.
So it's dangerous out there, man. It really is. And I'm trying to figure out what do we do, because I believe in the police officers.
Yeah.
I believe in policing our communities. I think some of the things that a lot of these mayors have decided to do, and that is have more foot traffic, because a beat cop gets to know the people, they get to know him, and also he makes himself more vulnerable. So, when you are more vulnerable, it is into your best interest to build a relationship with your community. But when you ride in an armored car full of a bunch of guns, you just roll up on people, it seems like, and just start shooting when something's going on. And, mind you, it's not an easy job.
No, it's not.
It's a dangerous job, especially when you're dealing with domestic situations.
Right.
A call where somebody is shooting and they're actually shooting, the training will kick in, and that shooter doesn't have the advantage. The police does. It'll probably be down. But in a situation where there's an argument, you can't roll in there like it's time to shoot somebody. It's time for me to kick in on my training. No, there's an argument. There's something going on. See if you can de-escalate the situation. I think, as I said before, and I'll shut up, and that is, if we can figure out a way to have mayors, senators, and our congressmen to have panels that review police shootings that are not police officers. In order for it to work, you got to start with community leaders, because they'll never let communities. But eventually, those positions should be voted on by the community. And in that community, that board reviews all police shootings. They give their recommendation, and then it goes to the court system. Not the FOB, and then it goes to the court system. It should go before the panel that was voted on. And I know a lot of people will say, you don't want people that are not educated and able to make a sound decision. But there are a lot of police officers that are not well educated, and they making sound decisions with a gun in their hand.
That's right.
So I think we ought to be able to use the community, because what it does is it helps that police officer know that first of all, I want to build a relationship with this community. Because if I do have a shooting, I'm going to have to justify that to these people. And this is the community in which I work in. What you'll find that happening, I believe, without default, is many of the people that start policing that area will look like the people that are in that area. That doesn't guarantee safety, but what it does guarantee is empathy. Because if I look like you, if I know you, I understand you and your way of life, or I see it, then I might think twice before I just kill you. I've seen the same as that video shows that white man getting shot down and several black men getting shot down. I've seen the videos where a white man was beating two police officers. I mean, they was doing all they could do. They finally stunt gunned him, tripped him. They did everything to subdue him. He had mental problems. You know what I'm saying? He had mental problems. And they shouldn't have gunned him down. And he was a big guy. But you and I both know, had he been a black man, they'd have gunned him down.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't value his life, but they valued the other one because they were from that community. Though they didn't know him personally, he looked like them. They understood he had kids too. And something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted to subdue him so that they wouldn't be judge and jury, but that society could make a decision on what his next steps were. Because if my father used to tell me about a police officer, we are to protect and serve. We're not judge and jury. Our job is to protect and serve. And I have to have that conversation with many of my fellow officers because they get upset and start talking about if such and such do this or do that, I'm not going to take it no more. In essence, they're speaking of murder, and they don't even realize it.
Right. John, this is, well, you're giving us some fantastic information here. And John, one of the things, what do you think about why is it that white folks, even some black folks, get upset about Black Lives Matter? Do they understand really what these folks are saying? That Black lives do matter? It's not that other lives don't matter. It's just that our lives have been so underappreciated that we need to stand up and say that Black Lives Matter. I think that we're seeing the glass half full when it comes to equal opportunity for people of color. And people get upset, man, when you say Black Lives Matter, man. I have to talk to these kids, both black and white, and tell them, yes, Black lives do matter. And we need to take time out and understand that we're not saying your life doesn't matter, but Black lives matter.
Well, I think you hit the hammer on the nail, and I think what it does is, and hats off to the millennials who came up with the slogan. The way they went about it, and here's the thing, and let me say before I talk about that, because change doesn't come easy, and change comes with disruption, and with that disruption, if it's nonviolent and you're trying to make a point, then I have to sit back and commend those who decided to do it that way. You remember it started here in Atlanta where young kids would stand in restaurants and just keep yelling Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And the restaurant was like, well, you're disrupting my place of business. And that part is not right. But they did it because they're trying to bring awareness to exactly what you said. And that is, if I have to keep saying it that way, then you realize my life matters. It's not that yours doesn't. It's just that mine doesn't. So I'm saying it so that you will realize the importance of it. And what happens is, what's confusing to me is my African American brothers, my black brothers that, as you said, feel like we don't need to say Black Lives Matter. We need to say all lives matter. But here's the reason why we say Black Lives Matter. So you'll say that. If I say Black Lives Matter, you say all lives matter, I just won. I just actually met what I was trying to accomplish, because before you were never saying all lives matter. Before you were walking the streets and you assumed that all lives mattered. But every day, black boys were being gunned down in the street. Every day, black women were being hung in jails for being pulled over, for being disruptive and wondering why they were being pulled over, upset about it, paying their taxes, and they have a right to ask, and they're being hung in jail cells. So that's why Black Lives Matter, because in many cases they have not mattered. Look at Trayvon Martin and the situation of somebody thinking because he's policing this neighborhood, he has the right to take somebody's life and to justify it and actually get off when he wasn't even a police officer. What they did with that verdict is they made the rest of America a vigilante, and they made them legal. And so it makes it hard for me to fight against guns when you're arming people that don't think I matter. Mm-hmm. And so I want us to continue the nonviolent approach that Black Lives Matter, because if we continue that and people keep talking about it, it's almost like Kaepernick going on one knee. Kaepernick went on one knee, and though he may have created a lot of controversy, and though one knee and what he was fighting for may not have a place in the NFL, but the reason why it has a place in the NFL to me is because 70% of the NFL employees looked like him, and the fight that he was fighting for fairness, oppression, and young African Americans not mattering. And he gave an example. In essence, he gave us an example of the Star Spangled Banner. It was more of a wake-up call to say, we do things in this society as African Americans, but we don't read our history. We don't do the research. We don't know the actual facts behind it. We just fall in line because we want to assimilate. We want to be like everyone else and be accepted, and we just do it. I'm not saying that we can't continue to do it. I love my country. All I know is America, and I've traveled to probably 10 or 20 different other countries, 4 different continents. But I love America, even wherever I've been. But I want it to be America for me, and America for my kids, and America for my grandkids. And there are times, the reason why the 100 Black Men of America exists, there are times when our kids don't matter. There are times when people don't care about the education of our kids, don't care about trying to create a better school system in the community in which the majority of our kids look like you and I. And so if I don't advocate for the right of those kids, then I don't give another Harold Bell a chance. I don't give another John Hollins a chance. You know, I learned something in this life, and that is, it's a journey. It's going to end for all of us, and it's not what you have when it ends, but it's more of what did you do to make a difference positively in other lives while you were here. And so Black Lives Matter and all lives matter, but we have to keep saying Black Lives Matter so others will say all lives matter. Because when they say all lives matter, they begin to include us.
Right. John, I tell you, it's fantastic, man. We're running out of time, but we got to do this again because we have so much to talk about. I mean, the information that you just gave my listening audience, man, needs to be heard. And the job that you're doing, we cannot allow you to go too far, man, because we need the John Hollins to help our young people to become healthy, wealthy, and wise, and to become productive human beings. And they're looking at you, they're looking at me, and we got to lead them because they're looking for direction. John, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to having you back here, man, for a second time around because we just have so much to talk about, man. We really have a whole lot in common, John.
Well, Harold, I'll tell you this, and I want to end with this, and that is, I believe in diversity. I believe that God made us all equal, but He made us different. And because we're different, we have to be proud of being Black, because that is who we are. Proud of your brown skin, proud of your heritage, proud of your culture, and proud of your people. It doesn't make you prejudiced, racist, or bad. It just makes you strong. But you must always try to be strong around others so you can bring them into the fold. And so I believe in all people. I believe in goodness, and I thank you for your show and giving me a few minutes to talk on it. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's John Hollins in Atlanta, Georgia. And this has been the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. I'm Harold Bell. And just remember that every black face you see is not your brother, and every white face is not your enemy. And be sure to go to blackmeninamerica.com and the original InsideSports.com to read my commentaries on the things that we've been talking about this evening. I'm Harold Bell, and you can color me gone.